What I'm going to talk about is back in March, on March 3rd, there was a lunar eclipse, which when the Earth gets between the sun and the moon, not a solar eclipse. And I would normally not travel for a lunar eclipse. I mean, they're nice, they're fun to look at, but it's not worth traveling across the country for. But David Levy called me and said he's got he arranged to view it from the top of Mount Palomar. And he invited me to have a complete private tour by the former director of Mount Palomar. That I couldn't turn down. So, but before I say that, I just want to mention, you've all heard that we passed our light pollution law by the Senate and the House. There's slightly different versions. In the House, it was attached to the energy bond bill, which is supposedly a must-pass bill, which is fine. And in the Senate, they decided to do it as a straight bill, which is fine, which rarely happens these days. And in past years, it always gets hung up in ways and means, which is the way to limit actions. This year, Rodriguez let it go through, and it passed on a roll call 39-0. Okay. But because they're in two separate forms, they have a conference committee which has to iron out any minor differences. They're not significant differences. The House version starts January 2027, and the Senate version starts January 2028, for example. But there's no substantive difference in it, so I don't feel that this will be a roadblock. Senator Green from Newton was the prime sponsor, and our Senator Tarr was the co-sponsor. So we were well represented.
Mario, how long have you been trying to get this bill passed?
You know, Kelly reminded me at our meeting last night, we actually filed our first bill. We wrote it, the first one, 1992.
Congratulations, man. Thank you.
Now, on a sour note, well, have you seen the email I just sent around? Sky International. This company in California wants to sell sunlight at night, so that they applied to the government to put up a reflector that'll cover a 3-mile diameter area in moonlight, basically as strong as moonlight, reflecting sunlight. Anyone who wants to pay for it. They're planning 50,000 moons and stuff. This is insane. Okay, but I won't give name with the current administration, you pay them off, they will let you do anything. So they were approved for one test satellite. IDA and a bunch of other environmental groups are talking lawsuits now to stop this, but we'll talk more about that later. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do one really quick test. I'm going to turn off the mics in the audience. And Mario, would you recite a little poem or sing a song? And we'll see if just your own mic will carry the day.
My kids have informed me never to sing in public.
Sounds like it worked. Keep going.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Why don't I just talking about Mount Palomar? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you need our screen going?
Oh, you didn't. I didn't share my. I didn't make you a co-host.
Oh, okay. I forgot you actually said that the other day. So I got to be a co-host, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I got to bring up that email. Hold on. So
you need to log in.
you actually did send that to me, and I
should be in
slipped my mind. Okay, where's your email now? Michael, here we go.
You don't get this kind of suspense with every astronomy book.
Come on.
There you go. All right, hang on, let me modify your permissions.
Okay. Am I in now?
Go ahead and share your screen.
Sorry. Now it's too.
You're getting feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
You good?
First stop muting yourself here.
Okay, that should do it. Right.
We're getting a little echo.
Yeah, you have to turn off your light.
On the lower left.
Why is this not?
No, but that's only one.
There we go.
Oh.
Well, hold.
Are we good?
Oh.
Sounds good.
Um,
Thank you.
So let me just start.
Is that your home in Florida, Marty?
I wish. So I'm still getting feedback here.
You have the computer off.
Hmm?
The computer speaker's off.
Yeah, no, it's off right there.
Yeah, well, that's the Zoom's off, but I turned this one off too.
I'll just stay away from it. You know what? I can lower the volume.
Volume.
Ah. Don't usually. Hold on. All right, I shut that off. Is that working now? I shut it off there.
Okay, that should do it.
Okay, are we good?
I think we're good.
All right. Sorry for the delay. Why is it? I keep turning it to start the slideshow and it keeps reverting back. There we go. Okay. So what happened was David Levy, for those, how many know David Levy? He's written a lot of books. He's been a friend of mine since way back in the early 70s when he lived in Toronto and then Boston briefly. And he's the one who, with the shoemakers, discovered Shoemaker Levy, the comet that smashed into Jupiter. And the scope he used for that was the Schmidt 18-inch, which is now in their reception area. They dismantled it, but I'll show you some pictures of that. Anyways, he invited me to go out there and to have a private tour of Mount Palomar. Was just something I had to do, and especially where he's getting older, and I wanted to do another adventure with him. So we went out there. As it turned out, the monastery, which is what they call the building for sleeping at night on Mount Palomar. The reason it's called a monastery is, I don't know, Hubble was a great man, but he was a product of his times. He grew up in the early 1900s, and he had a rule that no women were allowed on the mountain after 6. They could visit, but 6 o'clock, you're out of here. Down the mountain you go. And all men had to wear a 3-piece suit with tie, or you get no dinner. Dinner started at 6, and if you were 5 past 6, you got no dinner for the night. It was a little bit of a tyrant, but he again, it's the times he grew up in. But that's why it's called a monastery. It was men only. Anyways, they were redoing it, so we couldn't stay there that night. So we ended up staying with the San Diego Astronomers, an amateur group, which is 60 miles in from the coast. And that's fine. I brought my own equipment. It didn't matter where I took pictures. I still got the tour of Mount Palomar. So Mount Palomar is dear to me because it was done by Hale. He raised the money for it, but Hale recruited through Caltech Russel Porter. I gave a talk on Russel Porter not too long ago, right? And he designed this with a number of other engineers, but he was the prime engineer. And I've got a lot of his engineering drawings because I'm a member of Stellafane in Vermont. So I interspersed the drawings with the pictures I took. So, because it really demonstrates what you're looking at in the pictures. So let's just get into it. Why is it not advancing? Come on. Why is this having so much difficulty here? Oh, okay. Yeah, but I went too far. Okay. So Russel Porter started astronomy in this country up in Vermont. Why Vermont, of all places? Back in the 1800s, what power did the US have? They had water power. That's what all the machinery ran on. Vermont has a lot of streams and lots of water mills that ran. So in Springfield, Vermont, was the world and US center for making precise gears. So they had a lot of engineers there who are very bright people, basically making precise gearing for the Industrial Revolution and sent it all over the country and worldwide. Russel Porter was recruited to be one of the engineers for these companies. And while he's there, he had self-taught how to make telescopes. Prior to 1920, if you wanted a telescope, you either went to Alvin Clark right here in Cambridge, and for an average person's salary, it was like 20 years' salary. Okay, they were incredibly expensive, but they were great scopes. Or you sent away to England. There were no Celestrons or cheap telescopes around to buy. There were just none. He self-taught himself how to make a telescope and taught people, a lot of the other people in Springfield, how to make telescopes. There was state fairs about it. And finally, he founded Stellarphane and basically grew amateur astronomy. Caltech, Scientific American, Ingalls wrote about this, several articles, and he became famous. He got recruited to Caltech because Hale wanted to build the world's biggest telescope. At the time, Hubble was working on the 100-inch Hooker scope, which is on Mount Wilson. Hale said, I want to build a 200-inch. He got the money for it because he manages to get rich people to give him money. And that was Russel Porter's first drawing. Guess I just have to click it. So this is a more refined drawing later on of how it was actually built. This is the entrance. If you go to visit, there's a visitor's hallway that you can go in. And that's Gene Mueller, who was the former telescope operator of the 18-inch Schmidt and then graduated to run the 200-inch. So if you're a professional astronomer, you'd go there, try to get your images. She would run the telescope. Okay, she's since retired about 8 years ago, and she knew David Levy, who's on the left, quite well. He used the 18-inch with the shoemakers. And you want to say anything about Jean since you met her and know her?
I was in grad school at Caltech in the late 80s. I started going to Palomar a lot, and at the time Gene was running the second Palomar Science Survey for National Geographic, and you could go in and see the plates that she had acquired and inspect them with the loupe.
I'll show pictures of that after.
I remember her saying even, a wonderful lady, very laid back. I remember her saying even then that they had to give up on the goal of getting the entire sky visible from Palomar, entirely photographed without satellite rifles. And this
A lot
was
worse
in
now.
the late 80s.
All right, thank you. So if you go inside the hall, this is what you'll see, and you can see it through glass, which is the visitor center. It's a worthwhile trip. We went through the back entrance and went through every closet. She still had the keys to everything in there. We opened some doors that hadn't been opened, according to her, in 30, 40 years. And most of that stuff belongs in a museum. So I'll explain that as we go along. In the front entrance is a photograph of that's the Hooker. No, that's the 200-inch. What am I saying? And that's Gene. That's Hale, who raised all the funds for it. He's from Chicago, and he built Mount Wilson, Mount Palomar, and several solar telescopes as well. He was a great fundraiser. And that's why they have a statue to him there, because he got the money for it. And that's Russel Porter later in life, being given an award from Caltech. So he was recruited. He technically worked for Caltech that ran the 200-inch. So the first thing they did is they went up to the top of Mount Palomar, they leveled it, and he did scouting runs, a small telescope, taking pictures, looking to see where the best spot for this giant telescope was going to be. And that's one of his that's actually the spot he decided on. And here's one of his early drawings, 200-inch, and other things that are going to be needed up there. They added a number of telescopes afterwards. Here's a model. So just you get an understanding of what you're going to be seeing. It's an ingenious design. It's a horseshoe design, which allows, because this is at roughly 30 degrees, it allows you to go all the way to the North Star, true pole, by swinging in through this horseshoe design, but covers the entire east and west because it rides on a thin film of oil, and the gearing is down here, and the telescope in depth, of course, moves as needed. Here's another model. And here's one of Russel Porter's drawings of what he envisioned it was going to be look like, and that's actually how it was built. I got some earlier drawings where they decided not to build it that way. For example, at first there were 2 gears down here. Now, as you can see, there's just one, but that's all that was needed. In fact, you're going to be surprised at how small a motor runs this. Blew my mind. So here's one of his early models. And here is the finished product. Now, all these, this is known as the cage, and the mirror is right here. The cage has spectroscopes and a whole bunch of equipment that's used, and a lot of controls are in there. I got to go in that. The original cage was way up here. And that's because, and I'll show pictures of that, back when it first saw first light in 1947, it would have been finished around 41, but a thing called World War II came around, all work stopped, so it got delayed until after the war. Hubble spent his last years at Mount Wilson with the 100-inch. When this was built, he immediately came over. And the way there was no such thing as an autoguider. Most of the astronomy amateurs here have autoguiders I know I do, because it's back in the early 1980s. I used to sit there for hours guiding north, south, east, west. It's very tedious. One minor mistake, you have to wait a whole year for that object to come around again. It's very frustrating. Autoguiders obviously are the way to go, but they didn't have them in 1947. So what they did is you actually went into the telescope up here, the light would go up there, and you would sit in cage and you guide on a star manually. Someone asked Hubble, how did you manage to do that all night? And he said, a strong bladder. Yeah. Another view. Again, this is just the support structures. This is the telescope. Here's another drawing looking east. Notice the cage is not on that. This is one of his early drawings before it was finalized how it was going to look like. That's with the cage on it. And here are the mirror supports. So you have to support This mirror weighs something like 6 tons. And the first one, it was the largest piece of glass ever cast when Corning, right here in New York, cast it. The first one cracked. They cooled it a little too quickly. You have to, it's called annealing. All glass has to be cooled very slowly when it's that big, so no stress builds up in the glass. My own little 32-inch, in comparison to this, was 3 weeks in the oven, slowly cooling down, for example. So this was built, and it was built before adaptive optics. All new telescopes have adaptive optics, the professional, to eliminate the twinkling of a star. They didn't have that back then. So but they had to support it. A scope this big would have multiple points of support, and it has to be balanced just right, because if one post is pushing too hard, it distorts the mirror. It's nothing you can see, but if you're off by a millionth of an inch, it distorts the image. So that's why they have to be balanced and calibrated just right. So that's a drawing of how it was going to be supported. Here is
gravity
it had pistons. It has pistons in it, and they're manually adjusted. Yeah. Well, back then they were manual. I don't know if they electronically now, but you see these holes in the back? So why is it built that way? Because if it was a solid piece of glass, first of all, it would weigh about 25 tons. But more importantly, if it was a solid piece of glass, it would take forever to cool down. Thermal stresses would be bad. In fact, they refrigerate the dome in the daytime so that it's the same temperature as what the night's going to be. It avoids that thermal stress. But that's where these cavities are exactly where the posts go. And the ridges are to support the mirror as if it was a solid piece of glass, but without the extra weight. And here are the workers way back in the late 1930s positioning the pistons that support the mirror. These are all historical photographs from Springfield and Russel Porter. So here it is now. And if you look up, those are the pistons. It's still there.
Hey, Mario, does that have to be colonnaded a lot?
Yeah, they use a Hartman map. I'll show you. I got a picture of that. So here it is, basically with the cage, with all the electronics and the primary mirror, the piston supports underneath, and then the rest of the telescope with the secondary up top. The drive gear is over here, and the north side has that film of oil. We'll get to that. They were doing some engineering work at the time, like I said, and got to talk to a lot of people. Here's the cage again. Now, under the scope, looking up, that's where the secondary is. It's covered up right now, but that's the mirror that reflects the light back down and then goes to a tertiary mirror. It's the same size as the cage, so I think it's around 2.5, 3 feet, something like that. But that's a good question. I forgot. Do you know the answer to that? I'll look it up. And that, the original design was you got in the cage and you would guide the scope. It was just prime focus. That's all been taken out. And because this is not adaptive optics, which was limited its usefulness to modern age astronomers, you want pinpoint stars now. What they did is they changed the secondary, got rid of the original, and put an adaptive optics secondary. So it, as the star twinkles, the adaptive optics works on the secondary and makes a perfectly still image. So they didn't do adaptive optics for here, they did adaptive optics for the secondaries. It makes sense, it works. Here's the cage. Okay, and here's the North Pole. So the way he envisioned this is it's a horseshoe, which allows it to go all the way east and all the way west. And you can go down as far as the pole. But that's a heavy structure. So how do you handle that? You can't do wheel bearings for something so big, it just wouldn't be steady. Even a speck of sand would throw it off when you're doing a photograph. So what they got is oil bearings here. And this is a hydraulic piston, and it forces pressure up against this highly polished piece of metal. And that it rides basically on a couple of not millimeters, micrometers of oil, and that's how it turns. This is the cage. It rides all the way up to get inside the telescope back then. It's not used for that anymore because no one sits in there anymore. It's all adaptive optics. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here is one of his earlier drawings. Got kind of the same concept. Notice it has a double gear. He just wasn't confident that one gear would run a scope so massive. So the original design was two, but then they did engineering tests and decided one gear is enough. You don't need two. And in fact, the motor that runs it is ridiculously small because it was so well balanced and so well designed.
The mechanical engineer who was working there when I was there in grad school told me once that you can push the telescope by hand.
I'll show a picture, but the original motor that ran this is this big. All right, so here is a wide field view so you can see the whole thing. Gearing electronics are down here. Cage, the original cage, the secondary, and polar axis. This is the south side. North side. Engineering drawing. Notice inside the tubes, there are stairs, it's a cutaway. There are stairs, so you can go up inside the tube for maintenance purposes. Both the tube and the horseshoe itself. It was designed to be able to easily maintain it. That's the outside. So inside, you can walk inside that horseshoe. And in the original, before they used adaptive optics, you'd ride a cage, get up here, you can walk into the telescope, and you'd sit in there and control, do the guiding and get your plates done. They didn't have CCDs back then. It was film. It was glass plates, actually. So the thing you did was you, in a dark room, spread the emulsion on a piece of glass. It was 8 by 8 inches, something like that. And seal it well. You bring it up inside there and you, in the dark, put the plate in. Then you could turn on a small red light and you start your exposures. This is how they did it back then. So from 1947 to around the mid-50s, the telescope was run this way. It's a man scope when you have to sit in this telescope, right? Right. This is that chair. Okay, so the chair that she's sitting in there, and notice it has a swivel thing. Okay, so as the telescope moves, the chair can swivel, so you're always facing up. Well, we found it in one of the closets. No one has seen this in 30 years or 40 years. But that was the chair, and the rubber is gone from the seat. But that is the chair. It's right on the. I told Jean this really should be in a museum. She says Caltech just doesn't seem to want to put a museum together.
Farmer may want it back for his tractor.
I offered to take it.
What does it say? Ford something?
What?
But what does it say on there? It has writing on
Cage, the cage chair.
it. It says Schwartzen or something.
What's that?
On the chair itself.
Oops.
Top here.
On the chair.
Top to back of the
Back
chair.
of the chair.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Florissant, that's probably whoever cast it. I thought you meant the tag. Okay, and that is the line on another side of this room is the swivel that the chair is sitting in. This is 1947, just at the opening of Mount Palomar, just before it saw first light. And that's Russel Porter in his later years, finally seeing the fruits of his, he got recruited out there in 1930, and this is now 1947. So he spent a good part of his life building this thing. And he died in 1949. So he made it. Well, it would have been sooner. Again, World War II put a 4 or 5 year hold on things. Again, back to the telescope. Some of the gearing that runs the big gear inside.
Is that a wand gear?
Hmm?
Is that a wand gear?
There is a worm gear in there.
Did you go back to the other?
You don't see it here. That's not, this is not the worm gear,
Alright.
but it's inside. This is built in the old style. They wouldn't do that now. It's built differently. This is behind that. So if you go, you have to crawl underneath and then stand up. And that's he's reciting a poem at the time. And then I went underneath because I wanted to see what was behind it. And this is a narrow space where you can see all the gearing inside. That's the gearing that runs. It's hard to get the true flavor of it, but I got parts that were taken out and replaced. That's what runs the telescope right now.
What's the scale?
That's only about this big. I mean, it's a motor, a series of step-down gears, goes to another gear, goes to the bigger gear.
That's the size of a washing machine motor.
Smaller. Yeah, basically, I'll show you in a minute. Here is the original gear train before they took it out and replaced it with what you just saw. This is the original motor. RA. That's all it took. It's a 1/4 horsepower motor that ran it. It's pretty amazing when you think how heavy that is.
To move 50 tons or something?
What?
To move what, 50 tons?
Yeah. Because it's so well balanced.
Could you go out for pizza and coffee while it's slewed to the zenith?
They have a separate slew motor.
Oh.
There's a slew motor, and that's the RA tracking motor. It says right there, track.
Yeah.
And they have a separate slew motor. RA track. Again, those have all been replaced. Then behind it, in another little cubby, is an interesting place where a lot of the electronics are kept. You can see some more gearing, but more importantly, this is one of the few telescopes on Earth this big that you can actually look through. It's only used a couple of times a year. It's only done for collimation purposes. But, oh, well, okay, I'll get that to that in a moment. There's a tertiary mirror that can direct down into where I'm going to show you. That's it. So behind there, you can actually put a 2-inch eyepiece right there and look through the 200-inch here. Wow. It's essentially never used. It's interesting. They built it so it could be done visually if you wanted, but no one ever uses it that way. All new telescopes, you can't look through. They're all designed for photographic. It's a waste of time. If you want to record data, they're not made for casual viewing. The one telescope on Earth, the 8.2 meter, the Subaru telescope by Japan on Mauna Kea, is also designed for photographic purposes, but they spent an extra 1.8 million bucks to put an eyepiece on it, to take the camera off and put an eyepiece on it. It was done that way so the Emperor of Japan could come and see this marvelous new telescope owned by Japan. So he walked into the observatory, took one look, about 15, 20 seconds, bowed to everyone and walked out. That eyepiece has been taken off and has never been put back on. I don't know what he looked at, but I guess it wasn't that impressive when he spent 15 to 20 seconds. But anyways, I wish I could get a look through it, but it's an actual eyepiece that, and the 200-inch, because it was built before 1950, when all telescopes had eyepieces, actually had an eyepiece, and it still has one.
The Emperor, I'll bet you he was looking at the Pleiades. What do you want to bet?
I would hope so. That's what the Subaru means. How many have a Subaru car? You know what that little symbol is? That's the Pleiades.
Oh, really?
That Subaru is Japanese for Pleiades. All right, so here I'm pretending I'm looking at something. So, okay, now I'm back on the upper level. We're gonna see some, oh, and if you look here, remember I said you can walk up inside, notice the stairs. Everything's designed for easy maintenance, which is, you know, you build it to work, but it takes foresight to build it so you can fix things, because everything eventually breaks. Here's one of his early drawings. And here is one of his engineering drawings. I mean, he has detailed drawings of specs, but I love his drawings that showed the global aspect, which were concept drawings, so that what it was going to look like. These, I have two of them in my observatory. And you can walk up inside and do maintenance.
Do you know, Mario, if he drew these before or after blueprints had been made?
These aren't blueprints. These are engineering drawings of
Right.
concept. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if he had blueprints.
He does. They're all at Caltech. Yeah, those are kind of just locked away. But those aren't as interesting as his. He was a marvelous artist.
Fantastic.
And this is the reality. So it's kind of dark, but this is what you just saw in this drawing. In fact, you walk all the way up. Yeah, just flash them so you can see it. And this is the other side. Now, look in the distance, we're going to walk around. This is the illuminizing chamber. Like I just had my 32-inch reluminized because my friend who runs his own company to illuminize it is about to retire. And he said, better do it now. So I said, fine. So it's a big deal. I needed 8 slaves to take the mirror down. I had to drive it all the way down, illuminize, stripped it, illuminized it, and brought it back. Another 8 slaves to put it back in place. You can't do that. You need a Egyptian size slaves to move an 8-ton mirror. So what they did is they had designed it so the whole bottom of the mirror comes down. This gets lifted by a crane and put on top, and the mirror is designed so it can withhold a vacuum. So they strip the mirror on the ground and then illuminize it right there, never taking it outside, which is important because I don't know if people know, the 200-inch has 2 bullet chips on it. The first mirror I told you was cracked because it got cooled a little too quickly. So Corning cast another one. They brought it on a big flatbed truck all the way across the country, and going near the New Mexico-Arizona border, some Yahoo decided it would be good to take pot shots at it. So there are 2 chips on the front of the mirror. And this is before they polished and grounded and polished it, but you can still see the chips. Yeah, they just painted it over, but that's a little bit of history.
That one wrench was dropped from prime focus, but
That I don't know.
it was a
I know it's got 2 bullet hole chips. but they ground and polished it anyways. So here is wide field on the ground. And what was I trying to show here? Oh yeah, this is the top of the aluminizing chamber. That's what I'm getting to. So here's the aluminizing chamber. Again, this whole thing, all this comes off. They lower with the hydraulic lift down to the ground, bring it over. This gets lifted by a crane, put on top, sealed, and a vacuum is brought down, and then it's aluminized. Takes the whole day to get enough vacuum because it has to be a perfect vacuum. I don't know if people know how mirrors are aluminized. If you just try heating aluminum, it would hit atoms and just scatter all over the place. So you have a perfect vacuum, and then you heat the aluminum, and the mirror is spun around to make sure it's evenly coated. And the actual luminization takes about 10 minutes, but it's about 4 to 5 atoms thick, just about a millionth of an inch thick. And that's all because if it gets any thicker, then you might have variations, and you don't want that. So they do this once a year. They strip it, re-illuminize it, and put it back on. Top of the aluminizing chamber. Again, same. And that's part of the vacuum suction thing. Okay, this is the Hartmann screen. So after you illuminize it and you put it back on, you go through what I'm doing right now, recalibrating everything, and it's a huge job. Well, they have a Hartmann screen, which they put right in front of the mirror, and that's how they illuminate. They look for each dot has to point. That's how a Hartmann screen works. So if it's not set properly, you'll see a bunch of dots over an area. And as you collimate it, all the dots will come together into one dot. That's how a Hartmann screen works. All right, here's at the North Pole. And here's his engineering diagram so you can see what you're looking at. Basically, it's pads pressed against it very tightly. This is very heavy, actually. And you have a hydraulic pump that puts pressure to force the oil up against the bearing plate there. And you can, what, did I go wrong? No, that's right. You can see some of that in here. Here's the cage. In the old days, you would ride it all the way up. Now it just goes to this level unless they have to do maintenance work up on the cage with the adaptive optics. And you can see it would basically ride up like that. No one does that anymore other than for maintenance. I begged to go up there, but they wouldn't let me. Okay, here is a view from near the north side looking down. And these are spectroscopes. They have four or five of them inside a side room, and they interchange in depending on what type of work they're going to do. Some are more specialized for broad spectrum, others specialized for near infrared. They all do their own job depending on what the type of data needs to be collected. This is the newest one. They haven't actually used this one yet. They're still working on it. So that's all inside under the dome. That's another spectroscope. And then on the north side, remember there was a control in the back. They had multiple redundancies. This is a control just under the North Pole. So if anything happens and someone needs to take control of it, you can control the entire telescope from this location right here as well. This is the bearings that move the dome. I was surprised. It's just a friction motor, basically a 1 horsepower motor, but it's just a friction plate that turns the dome. I mean, that's how my dome turns. And I would think they'd come up with something cleverer. I don't know. But it's just a friction motor that runs the dome. They have several of these all around the dome, like I do.
So those are springs that are firmly against the big ring.
Yeah, it's just friction.
Has the shutter ever blown off the Palomar and landed in the neighbor's backyard?
Not that I heard.
No?
That happened to me. A close up of that. And now we went through various hidden closets inside the dome. Here's some pistons and some motors that were used originally. I'm not sure what these motors were for. I showed you the one that ran the RA. Some of these might be deck motors, like I couldn't tell from the labels what they were. Now, this amuses me. Anyone know what this is? Any of the amateurs? Never used an ST4 from SBIG? The first auto guider made for amateurs is this. I have one in my house. That was my first guidance. I saw that and says, "What's this for?" It says they actually used that way back when. They tested it on Mount Palomar, and then SBIG decided this would be good for the amateur market. So
What year was that?
I don't know what year, but it was when they first started doing auto guiding. It must have been early 80s. But isn't that interesting? They used an SBIG to auto guide the telescope. I'm blown away. I got one. And this is interesting. You can read it. This is the first CCD camera in Mount Palomar. These are the people who built it, circuit boards, and the chip wasn't that big. This is way back in the early mid 80s. But that's the first CCD. It's just hidden in the closet. I mean, there was dust on it. I cleaned it off. I felt bad for it. This is the main control room. This is where they actually run it from. The others are emergency controls. This is Jean sitting at her control desk. She would run it. They monitor everything: temperature, barometric pressure, outside temperature, inside temperature. If anyone's lurking outside, I mean, they get cameras on everything. Looking at the scope itself, make sure it just suddenly doesn't run away. Okay, and banks of computers and control.
Let me stop you right there with the computers. It
Yes.
can't have been built that way.
What's that?
It wasn't digital in 1949.
No, not at all. Everything was analog. That's
Yeah.
why I had a hand guide. Yeah, but nowadays it's all. This is basically a huge air conditioner. You don't want thermal stress on a mirror that big. Eventually it causes problems. So in the daytime, they cool the entire area basically to keep it roughly the same temperature as what the nighttime is going to be. And that's just underneath where the cooling station is. Then they have a couple of workstations where they make quick parts if need be. Kind of like what I have downstairs. All right. Oh, it's out of place. That's the properly. Okay. Looking down from above again. All right. Global view. Close up. All right. And then one of his drawings. Where shows? Am I going back? Okay. Now. Oh, I know I put that in there. There's no pier, right? Why is there no pier? It's too big and too heavy. a pier wouldn't be stable. So they designed it, so basically it's huge steel underlayment. But then you say, well, what happens if there's an earthquake and things shift around? So this is his original drawing. What you saw was everything above that line right now. Now we're going to go down into the bowels of the place. And there's the steel structure. But again, although it supports it, what about vibrations? What about earthquakes? Well, they did think of that. Okay, here's the inside of the structure. Everything rests on earthquake-proof columns. So notice this. This is separate from here, and it's just filled in with elastic material. And if an earthquake happens and the ground is shaking, this hopefully just sits in place. They've been through earthquakes. Nothing has happened in the last 70 years, so I guess it works. Again, it's basically made to withstand earthquakes. And it's a big deal. I mean, if things got shifted and it wasn't pointing directly at true north, you'd have to spend a week or two getting it back to true north. So there's a reason for that. Notice these two discs here. Those are the gears to run the right ascension. They cast 3 of them. They've never had to, just in case something bad happened, they didn't have to recast them. So they got 2 spare RA gears. But the original has never failed. So they got them underneath just in case, which makes sense. I'd like to take one home. Here's another aluminizing chamber. This is for some of the smaller optics that they can hand carry down. One of the original dark rooms. Hubble spent a lot of time in there. It's no longer a dark room. It's where they store all the chemicals, special sponges that don't have any grit on them to clean the mirror when they're going to re-illuminize it. So what used to be a dark room is now a storage space for when they re-illuminize. Boots that they use to make sure they don't scratch it, because you might have to actually walk on the mirror in order to get to parts of it. And everything is designed so it's cleaned meticulously, I'm told, before they actually get on the mirror. Another dark room.
Mario, you know what the typical exposure time was during the analog era?
Yeah, 8 hours.
8 hours.
He would do 1 photo a night, frequently. I mean, there were times he'd do several photos, but for a deep photo, because these were blue and red sensitive plates, and they weren't that sensitive back then. So in order to get the beautiful photos you see, that was typically 6 to 8 hours of exposure, basically all night. This is what this dark room became, basically a storage room for lots of stuff. In an early era, this is obviously not 1947, but in the 60s and 70s, these computers were used in there. Now they're just junk sitting around. Okay, so that's the 200-inch. If you ever go there, there's a visitor center. And there's a lot of good information in there. This is the 18-inch Schmidt. The discovery of the Shoemaker Levy was through this telescope. It's been decommissioned. Now it's in in that room. But it has a nice, beautiful wide field, and it used only glass plates. It's a curved. I'll show you what they did, but it's not a flat field. It's a curved field. So you can't do a CCD chip for these things. So it became kind of obsolete, although they let the Shoemakers and David Levy use them. They still did the original glass plates.
Is that finder also Schmidt?
I don't know. You know, from the look of it, I'd say it's a Maxitoff. but I don't know. I should have, I was looking at other stuff. So this is, that's David sitting in front of his, he spent, basically David would, he worked with the shoemakers. Gene Shoemaker was actually a geologist. And back before he came around, people didn't know what created the craters on the moon. There were theories that it was volcanic. Most people thought it was impacts. He said he knew it was impacts. He just had to prove it. And he went around the world looking, and he discovered quite a number of impact craters all around the world. In fact, that's how he died. He was in Australia around 2002, I think it was. He was driving to an impact crater. He wanted to take pictures of it, and some drunk over the next hill crashed head on into him, and he died. But that was Gene Shoemaker. David continued to work with Mrs. Shoemaker for years. She just died about, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, and but that's where they worked together on.
Could you tell everybody a little bit about Shoemaker Levy 9? The Jupiter?
I have a poster of it that's going to come up. So here's the back end. Again, it's a Schmidt telescope. Here are the plates. So it's glass plates. And Gene is showing me them. The original glass plates. That's how they're made. Because it's a curved field, you have to actually put it in a vacuum so that it's held down to match the Schmidt scope. Those are photos taken through the 18-inch. And you basically scan the plates with a high-powered microscope looking for whatever little speck you're looking for on the plates. And here's the vacuum. So you take out a glass plate. Now, this has to be done in the dark. Basically, you, with a brush, cover the glass plate. You put it in here in a case, and it would, with the vacuum, curve it, and it would stay that way. You would then take this and bring it to the telescope. It was a lot of work to get a picture back then. So glass plate and photos. And here is the dome that housed the 18-inch Schmidt. It's now been turned into a kind of a groundskeeper office. It's no longer being used for telescopes. That's the scope that went in it. And they had a dark room in there, so they didn't have to bring the plates all the way to another location. But that's the dark room that all the glass plates on the 18-inch Schmidt were done. Okay, so what's your question about?
I don't know if everybody knows.
Does anyone not know about the comet that hit 19? Okay, so in 1994, they spent already 8 years looking for comets. That's David's passion, finding comets. In fact, he found more comets visually than anyone on Earth. I think he was up to 26 visually with his own equipment. But because of that fame, the Shoemakers, what his wife's, not Jean. Remember? Carolyn, that's right. I'm sorry. Embarrassed. Anyways, Carolyn was interested in comets as well. So they invited, and Gene was interested in comet impacts and craters. They invited him to collaborate. So once a month, he'd drive from Vail, Arizona, where he lives, all the way to Palomar. And they'd spend 2 or 3 nights there in new moon time looking for comets, and that's what they did. So July 16th to 22nd, they found a very strange comet that was split up into multiple parts. When they did the analysis of its orbit, they realized that the reason it split up is because it made a close pass to Jupiter already, and it broke the comet into 22 pieces. Okay. But then when they went the calculations forward, they suddenly realized this thing's going to hit Jupiter. Worldwide, uh, it became worldwide noise. And in fact, at that time, I had a 16-inch in Linfield, and I had for that entire week busloads of kids come every night to look at the impacts. It was clear for a whole week in New England. Uh, but that's what happened. So one impact after another, all 22 over the space, I think 8 or 9 nights. But I still remember those vividly.
The largest spot could be seen in a 3-inch telescope.
Hmm.
The largest spot could be seen in a 3-inch telescope. If you've ever seen like a shadow transit on Jupiter, where one of Jupiter's large moons has a shadow on the planet, that's kind of what it was like. You could see the largest one in a really small telescope.
Yeah. 16-inch, so fabulous. In fact, every impact zone created a black spot on Jupiter the size of the Earth. So if it hit the Earth, it would be a bad day. Just ask any dinosaur. And this is the 48-inch Schmidt. They were doing for some reason, the whole mountain was shut down. They were doing maintenance on that. But that's still active in the used. This is just a water tower, keep water pressure up there. And they have a whole maintenance plant over there. We went inside. Lots of equipment to build parts. You can't just order a part for a 200-inch telescope. You either make it or you don't have it. So they have a crew of engineers and machinists that are constantly making parts for maintenance purposes. I'd like to get one of those. It makes my lathe look small. So it's a big industrial area, and they constantly making parts for maintenance. Bandsaw. This is the monastery. And again, it was closed at the time, which is unfortunate. Otherwise, I would have taken a picture of the lunar eclipse right there. But it was shut down. And I told you why it was called a monastery, because you females just weren't allowed. At least back then. Now you're fine. Vera Rubin, you heard of her? She was the first one to be able to observe from Mount Palomar. And that's because she became famous for figuring out that the outer reaches of galaxies were spiraling just as fast as the inner reaches, which doesn't make any sense. You would think about a concentrated gravity source. The only way that makes sense is if you have a large amount hidden matter that would allow that type of gravitational field to occur. So she gets credit for discovering that, and some of the work was done here.
And her telescope just launched.
That's correct. And someone brought out a little quest star and took a look at the sun. There it is. That's Russel Porter near the end of his life. Here is a Frater Porter. Here's Richard. Richard, we need hand drawing of that. Okay, Frater Porter. And I want a copy. So we went to San Diego because we couldn't observe there. We were going to pick a spot on the base. San Diego astronomers. David knows everyone there. Invited us to be at their place. 60 miles in from San Diego, 1 mile from the Mexican border. This light is on the fence separating Mexico from the U.S. So I set up my rig there, and that's my photo of that lunar eclipse at 3:30 in the morning through the different phases.
Well, that telescope was shaking, wasn't it?
And I think that's my last photo. Yep. So I'll stop there and any questions?
Yay! That's a great film.
So Palomar today, do they have a particular line of research they do? Or they-
Yeah.
Like,
They don't do the deep research because the scopes in the Andes and Mauna Kea and the binocular scope further east in Arizona is a nice dark side. By the way, I was there for First Light, the binocular scope, which is currently the world's largest scope. It's 8.2 meters binoculars. And when they have a long story about that, I can give you another talk, but because squirrels were sleeping in February, they wouldn't allow me to. I had to get squirrel pass. I have that squirrel pass in a plaque in my observatory.
Keep your name close.
So, and I was actually inside the cell helping an engineer adjusting the distance for those two mirrors. But anyways, because of that, what they do here is brighter stuff, supernovas. I mean, it depends on the astronomer. They still use it for real research. California passed a dark sky law for that area of California, San Diego, and they sort of still follow, but not really anymore. So a lot of have to control private homes. And because of that, the light pollution has got to the point where they've lost the full magnitude. So, but they do what they can with that, and that's where it is right now.
Mario, who funds this now?
Hmm?
Where did they get the funding? Today's business growth?
Something like that.
Is that Caltech or,
This is still run by Caltech. They man it.
so Caltech provides the funds?
I think Cornell,
Everyone who works there works for Caltech.
I think Cornell may be helping with the extensively exchange for a slightly.
But Caltech is the owner, basically, the one who runs it.
Virgin one, basically, what do you get?
No, it's oil.
Almond?
No, this is always oil. It's got this pressure. You couldn't do that with mercury. Plus, it would be toxic.
Right, well,
Any other questions in the room? Alan, I know you've got a couple.
Yeah, I put him in the chat room. Somebody mentioned early on, great talk and great. I didn't know any of this stuff about Palomar, so absolutely fascinating. I'm not even a gearhead, and I really love this. Somebody in the room said something on they had to give up the idea of seeing the whole sky because of something, and I couldn't really make out what the question was. Could you clarify that? You know what I'm referring to?
I got a mic right here.
Oh,
You're on. You
okay.
could stand right there.
Yes, what I was referring to was in the late 80s, they were still photographing the night sky with the large glass plates from the 48-inch for the second Palomar Sky Survey, which has since been digitized and is now the digital sky survey. And even in the late 80s, they had originally a goal of getting a plate for every part of the sky visible from this latitude, free of satellite trails. And I remember Gene telling me at the time, at one point, they had to abandon that goal. So it's not that they wrote off part of the sky, but rather they had to abandon the goal of a pristine photograph of the entire sky visible from Palomar.
Excellent.
Because there were just too many satellite trails even back then.
Right on. Thank you. I don't know who you are. I can't see you, but thanks for that additional. And my other question, Mike started going there. I was wondering, when did the first computer come into Palomar and what was it doing?
I believe it was the 70s. That I showed a picture of one, and I was told that was either late 70s or early 80s. First computer to run it was in the early mid 70s.
So it was actually moving it, running it, adjusting shit.
Oh, I don't know if it was guiding or controlling, but the first computerization of the scope was back then. I don't know exactly what it ran.
Oh, great. Thanks. Good talk. Hope to see you guys tomorrow night.
Any other questions online? Hey, you got away cheap, Mario. Thank you again.
Good talk.
All right, everybody online, come to the star party tomorrow night.
Hey.